Welcome back everyone to another video on Barcelona in the Hansi Flick era. In the first part of this series, I did a comparison of Xavi and Flick in terms of their tactics, and we discovered they actually had a lot of similarities, but there were some very important differences. So today I'm moving on to a more detailed look at the tactics Flick might implement at Barcelona, focusing on one role in particular that could really define the success or failure of the upcoming season. But before I do that, I need to clarify this idea of vertical football that I introduced in the first video, because on top of their general possession ideas, this is the main thread that connects Xavi and Flick, and it's through this lens we can really start to understand what Flick will be trying to achieve. So when I say vertical football, I'm really referring to a mentality. How eager are you to get the ball forward quickly? And a good indicator of this is usually how spread out a team is, particularly in build-up, because by doing that, you maximize the space your opponent has to defend, and then you can go direct into those isolated forwards. Getting players close together and dropping forwards in often indicates less verticality since you're committing to play in a tighter area. Of course, against teams that defend deep, especially with 5 at the back, the space just isn't there, so it's a lot harder to be vertical. In fact, it's sometimes impossible. However, the intent will remain, so if that line does get too high, these teams are going to be as direct as possible. The reason I wanted to clarify that is that the more vertical a team is, the more they rely on the deeper players to control the game and progress. One, because of the physical positions of those around the ball and those ahead of it, but two, because once you have broken the lines, your only thought is forwards, to complete the attack and not to cycle the ball to establish control. That's why in the 2019-20 Bundesliga, the top 4 progressive passers in the league were Kimmich, Alaba, Thiago and Pavard, all deep players in Flick's very vertical Bayern side. And those same 4 players also had the most passes into the final third. And it's no coincidence that every time I've talked about Flick's Bayern, I've emphasised 3 things: the width of the fullbacks, the counter movements of the forwards, but crucially, this flexible double pivot, because it's here that control of the game is won. Which takes me onto this game of Xavi's Barcelona against Valencia, because it's in this game that we got a glimpse of what Flick's dynamic could look like at its best. On paper it looked like this, but as always, this was a lie. In the first phase, it was a back 4, a double pivot of Pedri and De Jong, Gundogan as a 10, with João Felix and Rafinha on the flanks, and Lewandowski up top. So straight away, you can see how this resembles Flick's starting shape. And not only were the systems similar in shape, but in application. If Bayern were pressed by 2 forwards, a pivot would drop in to create a back 3, and Barca did exactly the same thing with De Jong, as Pedri then became the main pivot for progression. We have the constant width, the counter movements, and the double pivot. And as you'd expect, the football that emerged was very Flick-like, and also very good. The pattern was, just like Bayern, controlling through the deep playmakers who were moving a lot, shift the opponent around, and then progress with vertical or diagonal passes. Again, exploiting space quickly when you have the chance. So as you might have figured out, the key role that I want to talk about is actually 2 roles, and that is this double pivot. Because for me, the success of this system is built on these players. And with De Jong and Pedri, you have everything you need to control and progress effectively. They have the technique, the press resistance, the positioning, the progressive passing. They can carry the ball and break lines quickly. And for those of you who thought of Pedri as an obvious 10 in this system, I actually think you really lose what makes him so special. This is a player that you want to get on the ball a lot to circulate the ball and dictate the tempo, but since you are breaking lines quickly, most of what the 10 is doing is moving to create space and then getting rid of the ball with 1 or 2 touches. This is what Muller was all about at Bayern, and not only would it be a mistake to lose Gundogan here, who's very good at this, I think it's a waste of Pedri's abilities to play him mainly with his back to goal. If you want to start managing Gundogan's minutes, a player like Fermin Lopez would, in my opinion, be much better suited to this role, given his ability in the pockets, movement into the box, and finishing. But when the disparity between touches is so big, it would really hurt to see Pedri restricted in general possession. And if you are worried that this deeper role would limit his creativity, that's where the balance between verticality and patience really comes in. And I'm going to talk about this a bit more in the next episode, but given the right dynamic, there's nothing stopping both De Jong and Pedri from being important creators. In fact, Barca's goal in this game was set up by De Jong, and Pedri was prominent on the edge of the box and even getting into the box. So for me, setting up like this absolutely maximizes what Pedri, De Jong and Gundogan are capable of. and would give Hansi Flick's Barca a similar level of control and verticality that Kimmich, Thiago and Muller gave to his Bayern. The rest of the players in the setup are pretty self-explanatory. If we're talking first choice, it will likely be Yamal on the right, Rafinha on the left. Balde will be exceptionally important at left back, as will Araujo at centre back. But the other player I want to highlight from this performance is actually Joao Cancelo. We've already touched on why it helps for these defenders to be good in possession, particularly with their progressive passing, and Cancelo against Valencia was arguably the best player on the pitch. It was a slightly different role to Pavard because Cancelo was often coming inside with Rafinha outside, but regardless, the fullbacks do often end up as the free man in build-up, and the ability to turn that into direct, vertical threat will be invaluable in Flick's system. This is a player that you have to use wisely given his defensive issues, but having Balde return to left back and Cancelo at right back is another way this system becomes more Flick-like and vastly more devastating overall. It is worth saying though that against Valencia, the conditions were really perfect to play this type of football. The defensive line was pretty high, it was a compact back four so space was always out wide, and the press wasn't consistently great, so against different types of opponents, this setup will face different challenges. Fortunately, we do have some other sample games. One that comes to mind is a game against Sevilla, who sat very deep, and it was the same double pivot of De Jong and Pedri, whose passes from deep unlocked the door in a 3-0 victory. So like I was alluding to last time, the very best of Hansi Flick's Barca will likely look eerily similar to the best version of Xavi's. And with that comes similar potential problems. For one, Barcelona didn't actually win that Valencia game, despite creating 3.2 XG and conceding only 0.5. They wasted loads of chances and made a huge defensive mistake. And it's those kind of things, along with the inability to play De Jong and Pedri often, that were the downfall of Xavi. If Flick is going to succeed where he failed, he's going to have to be luckier, both in terms of his team's finishing and avoiding injuries. That said, there is a major blind spot in this video, which I'm sure is already all over the comments, which is that I haven't talked about defending at all. And you'd be right, because that is going to be the subject of the next video in this series. But until then, I want to leave you all with a question, which will become quite important next time. So based on this video, I want you guys to tell me what is the one big difference that you've seen between Barca's tactics against Valencia and Flick's general tactics at Bayern. It is pretty subtle, but if you think you know what it is, drop a comment below and we'll see if anyone gets it right. Until then, if you can't wait for that, there's still so much more to learn in the meantime, and not just about football tactics. If you're interested in data and data analysis, things that are becoming very important in the professional game, I highly recommend checking out Brilliant, the sponsor of today's video. What sets Brilliant apart as a learning tool is that you learn by doing, and it's got thousands of interactive lessons on data analysis, but also maths, science, programming, and more. What I like about Brilliant is that it's all about the quality of learning, and there's a big emphasis on improving your problem-solving skills rather than just memorizing things. That's why every lesson comes with these hands-on problems that are both engaging, but also a much better way to learn than just watching a lecture video. Like I said, if you're into data analysis specifically, there's a whole branch of courses that are beginner-friendly, but do go really in-depth into topics like probability, how to parse and visualize massive data sets, combining information to make predictions, and much more. This is a pretty huge learning platform. So if you want to give it a go, you can get 30 days completely free by going to brilliant.org/thepurestfootball. The link is in the description, and you'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription through that link. So do give Brilliant a go. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Thanks to all my patrons for supporting the channel, and I'll see you next time.